Well, why don't we go ahead and get started for this session? Welcome everyone to Girls Team Ahead. This would be our fourth session. I'm Dr. Megan Federer with the Works, and I'm excited to bring these two ladies to our screens today to talk about the world of art and design in relation to possible careers, education, and just all things STEM. So if you've joined us on the past several weeks, on Wednesdays, we're talking STEAM with incredible women from our community and around the country. Engineers, designers this week, looking at research scientists and more. And I want to give a thank you out to our sponsors, some of our fantastic partners in our community for these programs are Facebook, the Heath Newark Licking County Port Authority, and Park National Bank. So many thanks to them for support of our efforts. So we're going to start out today with just some introductions of our two panelists and telling us a little bit about each of yourselves, kind of what you do, just a brief summary, because we can dive into a lot of things during our discussion. Just a kind of nice informal conversation today to let our guests kind of, hear your story, your path, your adventure in your career. So I'm going to have us go ahead and get started with Taylor, having you tell a little bit about yourself. You're the Vice President of Evo Design. You showed us your mug for branding.
Yes, yep, of course. Hi guys, I'm Taylor. I am the Vice President of Evo Design. I run the Ohio office. We have offices here right outside Columbus, Ohio. We're just across the street from the Works, actually, which is kind of fun. We have an office in Connecticut, and then we also have an office in China. My background is in industrial design, but now my focus is on the business side of design.
Okay, wonderful. And Stephanie, how about you tell us a little about your work at Waterworks and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, as Megan said, I am Stephanie. I'm a design engineer at Waterworks. So Waterworks is a specialty retailer of luxury and bath products. The company has developed a variety of product lines, including bath and kitchen faucets, surfaces, bathtubs, for washstands, basically anything you can find in your bathroom. And my role as a design engineer here is to assist in the new product development and supporting efforts. So I am responsible of designing or assisting in the design of especially our kitchen and bath faucets. I also provide technical assistance in terms of materials, do technical reviews, perform evaluations on our concepts, build new concepts, and basically any technical task that is required in order to launch new products. I also create a range of materials that support either the experience of the customers or our new product development. So these are products like renders, installation guidelines, assets, or any kind of drawing.
So it sounds like you both have a lot on your plates and what you do. That's fascinating. So thank you again to both of you for joining us. And I know that I have a lot of questions that I want to ask about each of your careers and what you do. And I want to encourage all of our panelists, whether you're a student, a teacher, or joining us from the industry sector, to feel free to incorporate your own questions into this panel. You can use our Zoom webinar chat to throw in some questions, and I'll work those in as I notice them as we can fit. We'll also try to make sure there's time at the end so that we can address any outstanding questions, any advice that you might have for students who might be interested in sectors related to what you do, and wrap things up. Now, one of the things that I'm going to throw you on the spot, Taylor, for this one. Stephanie incorporated into her bio what her design philosophy was and how she approaches design, saying that great technology alone cannot form a great product. Only when technology and design intersect with the user is a great product born. And made me curious, basically. I wanted to know maybe what your approach to design was.
Wow, that one's good. Wow, I should have read what she wrote ahead of time here. So I think for me, design, we do product design. So we work for clients. So we've worked for companies like Hasbro developing toys. We've worked for companies like Nike developing shoes, and Bose developing speakers. So in this setting, I believe that design is really focused on the consumer. So the end consumer and the person who's going to use that product in the end. And sometimes there are two key people that we need to look at. So for example, if it's a toy, we look at both something that appeals to mom and to the kid and the user of that toy. So to me, design is really about designing specifically for the person that'll be using that product.
So you would then kind of go with the true meaning of design thinking, where you're thinking about that that experience that a user is engaging with and what they're looking for, not just what you want to necessarily create.
Absolutely.
So I can speak from as a consumer, because I'm not a designer, that I always appreciate the products that are definitely designed with me in mind, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Now, one of the things that might be interesting to hear about in relation to all of the other topics that we've discussed on Girls Team Ahead is what a day in your office looks like. What does a day in your career look like? Stephanie, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'll start off with that because I think mine is like the more day-to-day kind of design as opposed to what I imagine Taylor is doing. So for me, especially right now in Waterworks, I start off by figuring out what are the things that are in the pipeline, in our product development pipeline. So what is a new task and milestones that we need to do, and we're looking to deliver as a team. So within that, I might be doing sometimes CAD development. I'll review CAD, that is CAD as in 3D models that is coming from the vendors. I'll create our own, or I'll do concepts that are ready to 3D print or send to manufacturing and kind of refine on that. In addition to that, sometimes I'll be doing product testing. So this looks like receiving a product and hooking up all of the supply lines and figuring out if this is performing as we're expecting. Is the friction that we have in the handles okay? If the flow is acceptable, so on and so forth. So I think my role in particular has shifted from, it integrates the design aspect in that I work very closely with designers as well to figure out what is the aesthetic of it. And then where I come in is to think about the mechanics and how we can make it merge in together. So sometimes I'll be working on either designers, CAD development, 3D printing, basically just building stuff. It's a lot of building stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so like I said, yeah, Stephanie's definitely kind of a more straightforward, what you would think of as a designer or an engineer or a design engineer. So I kind of briefly touched on it, but my role is on the business side of design now. So I did go to school for industrial design, but now I focus actually on the business side. So I do, because we're a small company, I do a lot of different things. So I do a lot of project management, which means making sure that we're communicating between our client and our team, that we're meeting the deliverables that we've promised to a client. Sometimes I'm doing billing to make sure that the client pays, gets their invoice and pays for that work. I also do all of the sales for the company. So a lot of times my day involves a lot of phone calls and following up with clients, giving presentations to new clients to tell them what we do and try to work with those new clients. Sometimes it involves conflict resolution. If a client's unhappy with something, is working through what that problem might be. Sometimes it's cleaning the toilets before a meeting. So it really is just about anything that needs to get done. This week I am working on developing a new website, which I've never done before. So yeah, so it's a little bit different every day for me.
Constantly applying your skills and growing and learning new ones, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
That knowledge comes in handy for sure.
Yeah.
Now that we have a sense a little bit about where you are currently, right? So what your current position is, let's backtrack. And let's go back to the beginning and think about, how did you maybe become interested in anything that led you along to this path? So maybe you didn't know that design, industrial design, and design engineer was going to be where you ended up. We never know where we're going to end up when we're young, but we know that we have certain interests. So think back to that. What are some of the earliest things that you can remember that really maybe led yourself along this career interest path?
Yeah, I can jump in there. Mine is a really kind of strange path. So I've always really enjoyed art, especially modern art and furniture as a kid. So we would go to art museums, and we would spend a lot of time in museums, and my parents would typically just leave me in kind of either the modern art section or the section that had contemporary furniture. and go do something else and come back and get me oil later. So I actually thought originally I was interested in interior design, but I have no spatial capabilities. So I did an internship in high school in interior design, and I couldn't figure out if a couch would fit in the room or not unless I moved the couch. So I was like, well, this is not for me. So I went to school for business actually originally, and I didn't like it. So I quit school. It didn't go well with my mom, as you can imagine. And I took a semester off, and she basically said I had to do an internship with somebody and had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. So that person was an industrial designer, and I had never heard of industrial design before. I didn't know that it was a field. And I had always loved products and packaging and color. And so when I started working in industrial design and learning about it, I was thinking like, this is so cool. But I also didn't really do art in school, so I didn't have a portfolio. So that person was really a great mentor to me because she helped me. I did some night classes at CCAD in order to learn how to draw, because I didn't know how to do that going into art school, which seems unusual. And I did night classes to learn how to draw, and then I did that internship, and I continued working there for about a year and a half. But I did apply and got into CCAD and started in art school, on an industrial design path.
Now, Stephanie, I don't know about you, but I find that really inspiring that you can go to art school without necessarily knowing how to draw first, that they'll teach you to go, because I think it would be super fun to be able to explore more creatively a lot of things that we do. And I know that my 4-year-old probably can draw better than I can. So I'm feeling good about my chances, Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? For me, part of being a designer is to have an open mind and just say, yes, I'll go for it. I think that is something that's been constant for me and for other people that I know have followed the same path. So on my end, since I was a kid, I was like Taylor, very interested in art. But I was also very interested in math. And when the time came that I had to choose a career path, I wasn't very sure if that meant, if that was like in the graphic design area or that was architecture. So I was kind of fumbling what direction to go to until my uncle, who was very influential in helping me choose a path, said like, hey, well, there's this product design course design engineering course degree that you can take, and it merges engineering, design, and architecture. So you can study everything that you want. And I think for me, the key part is that back home in Mexico, programs are a lot more structured. So it wasn't an option to major in one degree and then say like have some side courses. It's a very structured program. So I had to choose. So having that option to say like, yes, the design engineering program was the perfect path for me. So I did that for 5 years. But even within that, there was a big exploration because design has so many aspects of it. You can be landscaping, artist, you can be a graphic designer, architect, product designer, UI, UX designer. There's just so many variations that you can go to, and they kind of build off of very similar skill sets. So it's really taken me required me to explore different paths. So I started off exploring like, well, maybe graphic design is something for me. And then once I had a little bit of field experience, I realized that the dynamics wasn't really much for me. So I shifted to architecture, and I did an internship in Spain in a firm called Dos Arquitectos, which is a fascinating experience, but it also learned that 2D CAD modeling is not for me. So I said like, okay, I'm just shifting from that. And then I discovered the world of product design. And for me, it's been very interesting because it has on one side, the creative side of it where I can draw, I can do a little bit more like visual exploration, but I can also have like my more technical side and like thinking through, okay, how does this work and how does this specifically address a certain group of people's needs. So that's how I've kind of landed here, but it's certainly a path, and I don't think I'm there yet. I'm still constantly shifting, but tying to what I said earlier, it's an exploration, it's a process.
That's a great way to describe it though, because you've had so many different experiences that have led you through that path. And it wasn't just a singular for either of you, a linear path from point A to point B. You took many different deviations. You tried out different experiences to really help you hone in on, where you are now and what made you passionate about what you do. Now, one of the things that might be fun, because we've mentioned a few different types of projects, we go from obviously the luxury bathroom products or faucets and so forth, all the way over to kids' toys, to speakers. I think, Taylor, you also mentioned shoes and other pieces that you've designed through the company. What is maybe one of your favorite, or if you're willing to, least favorite projects that you've ever worked on?
Ooh. You want to take that one, Taylor, or shall I take that one?
That's a good question. I think for me, because, so I'm going to add on to my last answer, and then I'm going to segue in. When we're talking about kind of strange career paths, I got almost all the way through design school and decided I didn't want to be a designer. So that was like another wrench that I had to deal with. And I looked into design research, and that's how I eventually found my way to project management and into business development. So because of that, mine is not necessarily like I'm working hands-on, developing products and designing things. So I guess my answer is a little bit more on the relationship-based side of things. So, I work really closely with our clients, and I think there's a few clients that I really like because they're really putting an effort into becoming truly sustainable brands. And for me, I find it's a big responsibility of designers, especially designers who are making goods. A lot of the things we make are items that will end up in the landfill and fairly quickly. So for me, I feel like there's a big responsibility for designers to work the best they can to come up with sustainable solutions. So we're working with a client now that does tooth care, dental care products, and they're really trying to push and make a change for sustainable. So we're doing some very cool projects around sustainability, and to me, that's very, very rewarding and probably my favorite, one of my favorite projects, just because I think sustainability is so important.
Yeah, so for me,
I'm gonna think about
that. So for me, there was this one project that had a huge impact on how I view things now, I guess, and it had impact in professional and personal sense. So I think I took this project in my junior year of undergrad to participate in the International ASME Computer Human Interaction Conference. So for this, you needed to do select a research theme and submit a paper, and that described a project that you developed for that subject. And we chose, it was a team of 3 girls and one tutor, and we chose to develop a project for trying to address issues of gender violence. So this was a very difficult topic to address. It's challenging because of the personal implications that it has. It's very difficult. It has a negative connotation when you talk about this in the open. So it's very difficult to actually do a one-on-one research with people that have suffered through it. So it's very hard. It was challenging in many ways. It was a lot of work to do. We delivered, the research paper and delivered a project based on that. That was like kind of a product that could help create community around people that had suffered gender violence and help them overcome situations of that. And it was a fascinating project. We submitted the paper. When it was accepted, and we were able to go and to present the project into Paris and show the poster and the project, and we won second place. So that was great on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was a great opportunity for me to see how design can have a very huge positive impact in people's lives. And it really, I think it has a little bit to do because of the subject, but it also, it's the material aspect of it, that there's value that you can deliver through products, and you can actually have a significant impact on people's lives. And I think that idea has really permeated throughout my career path. It's always a matter of thinking about, okay, well, it doesn't matter if it's like in a packaging solution. It's like, how can, through this packaging solution, can can this product be better? And I love that idea. And I think it's super powerful. And the reason that I love design.
Well, both of your passion obviously shines through, and that's such a great message to end on there, Stephanie, that, through your field, you can have that positive impact no matter what project you're working on. And it can be as big or small as addressing societal issues or the way a package actually comes together. So that's wonderful to kind of hear that perspective. So let's talk about education and career. So how you got to this point. Starting with something pretty simple. Where did you go to college? I know we heard a little bit, but let's get the quick bulleted list on the resume summary of where we went and what we did.
I'm gonna Stephanie's is way more impressive, so I'm gonna get mine in, and then we'll end with her. I went to the Columbus College of Art and Design, and that's it. I don't have any additional education past that. I do a lot of LinkedIn and online courses to learn things I'd like to learn more about, and I read a lot, but I don't have any other formal education.
And just to make sure, your focus area, your study area was actually industrial design, right? That is
yeah, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Industrial Design.
What about you, Stephanie?
Yeah, so I did a degree in design engineering in the Universidad Tecnológica de la Mixteca in Mexico. So that's not very heard of, but it's a good university back home. And then I applied for a scholarship to do a master's in science program in Penn, and I did the integrated product design program. So yeah, those 2 points. And since then it's, yeah, I have like 3 years of experience.
So with those 2 points, what would you say is kind of like the required entry point experience for somebody who wants to get into the field? Is it something where they should be looking at a 4-year degree somewhere? Are there 2-year programs that you would consider as great background, diving right in and getting on the job experience? What would be like some of the points that you have seen from colleagues that you work with or in the industry as pretty much the standard to get into something related to what you do?
Yeah, I would say on the design side, you can do you can do either a BFA or an associate's degree. So you can do a 2-year degree in industrial design. There's a good program in Pittsburgh. I do have a friend who did that program, and he then worked in the field for about 10 years and decided to go back and get his bachelor's degree, which I thought was interesting after that much field experience. But I think a combination of either one of those degrees, I do think you need to in most places have a degree, and that with a combination of internships, I think is really, I think internships are really critical and absolutely the very best way to learn. I think the degree is good to get you in the door and to get that initial position, but I think internships are critical, and the amount that you can learn in an internship and the amount that can help direct your career path and help you decide which direction you want to go is really invaluable.
It's true. You both have really emphasized kind of the importance in out of classroom experiences that you've had and how it has shaped where you're at right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll second to what Taylor is saying, that internships are super important. I think in terms of the programs, I guess you could do it like a bachelor's or associate's degree, as Taylor said. I think on my cases, there's some programs that don't really require a portfolio or a very refined portfolio to get in. So for example, for doing the master's degree, I've heard a lot of people that who I studied with that had maybe felt a little bit intimidated that their portfolio wasn't very designy, but it really depends on what the kind of people that they're looking at. And in that case, particularly for the IPD program at Penn, they're looking to create a more integrated view. So they accept people from engineering or business or design so that they can accommodate better or balance out the classes. So it doesn't really matter that your portfolio is strong from a design aspect, as long as you can show the tools that you have this thinking chops, the passion, and some sense of art. That is a good direction to start on.
Okay. Now, with those, obviously the internships are a big piece. They any of those experiences that you had shaped the direction of where you're at now. And I know we heard a few things about experiences that you had at, when you were younger that kind of helped refine your focus area. So what challenges maybe have you come across entering the design field? And maybe not necessarily personal challenges that you had to overcome, but challenges within the field itself, maybe with the coursework or with getting internships or being able to apply across, being a woman in the field, anything that you think really then, again, shaped how you approached like the next step of your education or career.
Stephanie, you want to jump on this one first? You want me to?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump into that one. So I don't know. I mean, I think in terms of coursework, I've had some courses that I've struggled with. I think the one that really left an impression on me was the Ming 510 program of design and mechatronic systems. So that one was very challenging because you have to, in the course of 6 months, you have to learn how to design for mechatronic systems. So using photodiodes and microprocessors and code and bring that all together. And for the end of the project, the course, you need to deliver this project of an autonomous hockey player that can find its position based on like 3 indicators on the ceiling, and you can play hockey. So it's kind of, that was very challenging. But for going back to, or moving forward, I do find I think I've transitioned to more technical positions as I've gained experience. And in doing so, I do tend to be the only woman in the technical team. And that is not to say that there's gender bias or anything, but it does change that social dynamics. So learning how to navigate that has been interesting. But one thing I would say is that you don't really need to feel intimidated by that. Like, yes, if you go into technical fields, you tend to be, there's more men than women, that's true. But I think even as the generations are younger, they're more accepting, more open, and as long as you know your materials, you're gonna be okay and you're fine. And it's not a hindrance.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've been in the field now for 13 years. So I've had some unique challenges. I think when I first started in my industrial design program, there were only 3 women. Only 2 of us graduated, and only I ended up in the field of design. So very small. You know, the class had 30 men in it. So although I have to say, I kind of personally like working better with men sometimes, because there's a lot less emotion. It's very straightforward. It just took me a long time to figure that out. So I had to really step back and really rely on having female mentors to help me navigate the space. As a professional woman, I have had experiences where, like, even for example, last year, and I will tell you my age, I'll be 37 in a few weeks here. I had somebody ask me if I was old enough to have a glass of wine at a client dinner. And I had to say, oh yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I've been in the field for almost 15 years. So, you know, sometimes you really have to kind of stand up for yourself. And I think the fact that, you know, I do occasionally get comments like, well, you look really young. Like, I have a lot of experience. I know what I'm doing. And you kind of have to be a little tough on that. And that typically comes from men. A lot of the people that we work with are men in corporate America who still go to work in khaki pants and a polo shirt with the logo of their company on it. And they're working at a company that they've been there for 30 years and they've done things the same way for 30 years. So I think a lot of it comes down to developing relationships in order to overcome that. But I definitely have seen that bias in a number of different settings. And I think it is a little bit intimidating at first, but relying on having a female mentor to help you work through those things and understand that, I think was really important to me. Sorry, my dog's drinking really loudly. That's the dog. But
well, I mean, I'm losing my train of thought with the dog drinking, but I mean, both of you really then showcased a big importance is standing up for your skills and not being afraid to really showcase your knowledge, your practice, and and use it. Don't try to hide that in any setting, whether you're working with people who are familiar with you or with new folks. I think that that's an important message to convey to you is, be proud of what you know and your skill set and use that to your and your company's advantage, definitely. So I think one of the things that maybe wasn't mentioned here, but that I'm curious about if this was a challenge for you or if you have advice related to it, and one of our questions here is, knowing that industrial design or engineering design or anything like that is actually even a career field. I think, Taylor, you mentioned once that you didn't even know industrial design existed. So if there's women or young girls out there who have particular interests, maybe they think they have always gone to the museum and been interested in modern art but haven't ever really considered art as a career, or have an interest in any type of STEM field. What advice would you give to girls who really just aren't sure what career options even are? Because Stephanie, you mentioned it as well. There's so many different types of art and design when you blend those together, not knowing what you can do. How do we find out what we can do? Because it is anything.
That's a really good question. And industrial design is really interesting too, because with a degree in industrial design, you can come out and be somebody who designs cars, you can design toys, you can design interiors, you can do you can do graphic design. So there's so many different things that you can do. I would say, relying on the school and the school guidance counselors to help, I think would probably be a good starting point. But I also think talking to people is a great way, attending things like this, where you can hear about different experiences. And if there is something that's interesting, I'd say don't be afraid to reach out and even call a company. A lot of people call in, and I've had high school students call in and say, hey, I want to learn more about what you do. And I'm always happy to hop on a phone call with them and then help them explore what the opportunities are. And then if I can, network them with somebody else. For me, it's, I don't know, you guys might be a little young for LinkedIn, but I think LinkedIn is a great place to find professionals in the industry and kind of find different people out there to talk to. But I think it really comes down to talking to as many people as possible and asking questions and not being afraid to ask and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that networking and getting to know people is one of the things that I would say that is super important. In addition to LinkedIn, you have a whole bunch of channels or other channels that you could use. Like you can use Slack, or you can use. There's other mentorship programs. There is for science fields, there's a girls in tech field. So there's a whole bunch of programs that you can either Google or find through LinkedIn that you can latch onto. And through those, you can find people who are interested in the field or are related in the field, and you can reach out to them to ask those questions. I think general rule of thumb is if there's something built, it came out of somewhere. So, I mean, if you see a graphic, someone did that graphic. If you see a glass, someone did that glass. So there's work going into that. So if you're curious and you say like, okay, where did this come from? And you just look for answers, you might find a field that is just related to that kind of product. I guess that there's so many things that we just give for granted that we don't really assume of where it's coming from. It's like, oh yeah, I have a lamp here. It's like, or I have these headphones. It's just here, right? Well, someone had to design this to get this here. So that's a good starting point. Yeah.
Well, that's great advice. So just, being curious and asking those questions. And we now have it on record that you can call Taylor and she will assist you in any of your questions related to design.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, while I want to encourage our guests here to feel free, again, type any questions in as we get to the end here that you'd like us to address. I'd like to start with maybe trying to do a nutshell, and I know it's always hard to do like your elevator pitch, but what's your elevator pitch type piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
For me, it's just stay open to opportunities. You need to find the opportunities, like do the research, find the opportunities, and go towards where that is. And going towards that's going to look very differently, depending on your field, depending on the person, depending on whatever your condition is. So in my instance, that meant to come to study from living in Mexico City, come to the States to pursue a master's degree and find jobs and roles that I could perform here, because even though, and back home, even though there's a very big manufacturing industry, design is mostly outsourced. So coming here in the States, it really put me in a position in which I could perform and do those tasks that I was interested in. So just having that initiative of researching and going to where your opportunities are.
To go for it, no matter where it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
What about you, Taylor?
I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. There's always somebody who knows more than you. And you know, I think being able to ask for help or ask for clarification, that was something I had a hard time with kind of early on in my career as a project manager. Sometimes I wouldn't understand something and I'd be afraid to say, you know, can you repeat that? Or, you know, am I understanding this correctly? And I think that like being able to ask for help or ask if you don't know something. You know, there's a lot of engineering words I don't know. You know, I've worked with engineers for years, and I'll talk with our general manager. His name's Mohan, and I'll say like, Mohan, what does that mean? I don't know what that is, because you know there's a lot out there to learn, and I think you know I find it really interesting to learn new things. So I think kind of being curious and not being afraid to ask for help and not feeling embarrassed to ask for help, I think is really important.
And you're right, because every field has its own language, right? Its own technical language that it uses. And I always get in trouble in science conversations because of all the acronyms that we use to stand for certain things. And I forget that we have to start saying what all the words are and then explaining what all those words mean as well. So an additional advice, maybe Taylor, this one for you for thinking about Licking County or Central Ohio specifically, where would a student, where should we direct students to maybe find out information about internships in your sector? Like, are there companies they should contact? Is it through CCAD's industrial design program? What would be a great way to get started to kind of look at what's out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So on the design side of things, I think there's a couple of different avenues. There's a website called Core 77, just CORE 77. And that has a listing of all of the design firms in the country. Designers can put their portfolios up there. So you can start to reach out and see if you see a designer that you're interested in, you can send them a message. You can find out where they work. I think, you know, going on to design firms' websites and looking to see if they have a contact us button. You can search, you know, design firms in Columbus. There's great graphic design firms around here. We have great illustrators in town. I think CCAD would be interesting to go the route, probably not for internships necessarily, unless you're a student there. But I do think it's interesting in terms of if you want to explore what the different areas of design are, even going and walking through the different buildings that they have artwork everywhere from the students. So you could see what animation looks like and what illustration looks like and what industrial design looks like and what graphic design looks like. So you can kind of go and get a big glimpse of what all of those options are. I also think there's opportunities with some of the big companies. Owens Corning has internships. There's, you know, a number of different places in Columbus. If you're interested in the digital side of things, the UX, UI, user interface, user experience, like there I go with acronyms too. There are a lot of the banks, which you wouldn't really necessarily think of, but the banks have really big digital teams. And there's an IBM group that's located in Columbus also. And all of those have internships. So Huntington and Chase, very, very big design research and design user experience teams too.
That's true. And that's a great way too, also for anybody who maybe has a significant technology interest. But in addition to the design, a lot of those firms are also interested in that user interface for apps and app development and changing how those engage their users. So another question that has come in, we'll start with Stephanie here, is what was the last thing you worked on?
Man, I work on too many projects at the same time, at least from a personal project perspective, but I do have a personal project here right on my desk. So I have a new concept here. This is a 3D printed piece that I did for dyeing my hair. This is kind of like a fun side project that I do on my own. I was trying to think about if I were to do my hair every day or dye my hair every day or how could I do that better? So this is what I came up with, which is a little device, kind of like an applicator to attach to my dye tube and put it on. So yeah, just a fun kind of piece, and I'm refining this as we speak. Well, like it's an ongoing project.
Now, have you used it? Because I see
Oh
that you
yeah.
do. So this is what you use.
Okay. It's kind of, this should be blue. It's kind of purple. I don't know if you see it because of
Oh yeah,
dye.
I can see it on the teeth now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And funny fact is that once I tried it, the color isn't stable in these kind of SLA prints. So it changed the color of my hair, which I wasn't very happy about, but that's kind of the sacrifice you have to do when you're experimenting with things.
Sacrifice for the art, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Taylor, what about you? What was one of the most recent projects that Evo worked on?
That's interesting. So we work in creating packaging. So it's called protective packaging. So we make the machines that make things like bubble wrap, or those little air pillows if you get something from Amazon and there's a whole long link of sausage air pillows. And the mailers. So we're actually working on a couple of different projects in that space of things to ship packages. So kind of a range of those different types of products. We're also, if you see the Amazon tape, that's the brown paper tape. We just finished a project creating, and I think Stephanie might have worked on that one.
Yeah, I did.
It's coming out soon. So finally, so that actually, it's called water activated tape. And you push the dispenser and it kind of shoots out and puts water on the tape. And then that gets put down onto the box to seal the box. So that should be out in the market soon. So we do kind of a range of things. We also have just done an eyebrow trimmer. So, you know, different types of products. Yep.
Water activated tape and an eyebrow trimmer.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I mean, it showcases the diversity of projects that you do work on as a company, right?
Yes.
So while we're waiting to see if anybody else chimes in with a question, I want to put my last one out for you. Is there anything that we are leaving out that you think does need to be addressed for the theme of, you know, getting to explore design, engineering, arts that youth teachers might want to know?
So part of my design perspective really stems from, or actually not I'm from the school of design thinking kind of train of thought. So a lot of the work that I do is geared towards that. But there's this very interesting book called Designing Your Life, which is kind of a design thinking approach to career development, which is very interesting. It stems from a course from Stanford with the same name. And yeah, it's kind of like an interesting tool that if you're thinking on being a creative kind of person, maybe what's the kind of framework that you could use in order to figure out and be more conscientious about what kind of career you want for yourself, can kind of help you define that. So I would use that as a reference. I can send it over.
I'll include it, yeah, in our post email link. I'll include that in the website that you mentioned earlier, Taylor, as well.
Perfect. Yes, I don't know. I think you did a great job moderating and covered a lot of things. I do think it's important to keep in mind that there's a lot, if you're interested in design, there's so many different things that you can do. And there's so many paths you can take. And sometimes that path takes you kind of all over the place. But I think it's important to explore the different areas and then to kind of refine as you go forward and kind of step back and analyze what part of the process do you really enjoy. For me, I love the client interaction part of that. So, you know, doing sales and doing project management, I find really enjoyable because I really enjoy talking to people and working with people and developing those relationships. So I think understanding and kind of looking at what you really enjoy, what element of the job you really enjoy, and looking at what you don't enjoy can help kind of guide what career direction that you want to go in.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point that you call out, and I think it comes back to this idea of having gain as much exposure as you can. So being very analytical, as you say, on what it is that you like, you don't like, but also trying to find ways that you can get as much exposure in the different areas that can help you figure out specifically if this is something that you like or not. And that exposure will look very differently. So it can be like, okay, I want to do this role for a while, but it also means like, okay, I found this website that I'm really interested in. I'll reach out to this person and talk about their project or something. Like just finding all of those avenues that you can find in order to kind of identify those points.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I don't think I have any additional questions from our guests. So I do just want to make sure that I say thank you to you both for sharing such creative insight into the world of design and design engineering. You have both contributed some really insightful stories. I loved hearing all about the path that you've taken and the advice that you have for students who might be interested, or even folks who just want to get into expressing their creative side a little bit more. So thank you so much for joining us this week for Girls Team Ahead. And I hope that you and the rest of our panelists can all join us next week on November 11th for our next program. Our fifth session will be on business and entrepreneurship. So Taylor, it fits right in with what you're doing in your design field.
Yep.
And we'll have two women from the area joining us to talk about their companies and what they do and how they kind of got into the field of starting, of being an entrepreneur and working in the business field. So thank you again. We'll see you next week. And as Stephanie said, just go for it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.